It's time for you to get involved now. This is not the time to sit on the sidelines. The San Francisco Labor Council, in conjunction with the Independent Living Resource Center San Francisco, is planning a massive day of collective action on December 2nd at 2 o'clock. Do you want to get involved? Do you want to do something? Well, I hope so, because this is not the time to sit on the sidelines. I'm here because I want to talk to you about an issue that's really important to me, and that is the potential cuts to Medicaid, or what we in California call Medi-Cal. Medi-Cal is a critically important program that enables people with all different types of disabilities to remain independent, contributing members of their communities. I want to tell you about somebody that uses Medi-Cal. Her name is Elena. About 10 years back, Elena lived in a skilled nursing facility. She had contracted multiple sclerosis and was unable to walk. She lost her housing and was in a skilled nursing facility. Well, my staff helped Elena move out of a skilled nursing facility, move into her own apartment. She volunteers at a local community center. She has a worker who comes in and helps her with activities of daily living, such as getting meals together, bathing, helping her get dressed. Elena needs a certain amount of support in order to remain an independent, thriving, contributing member of her community. Elena's worker is also an important part of the community. The cuts to Medicaid, what we in California call Medi-Cal, they impact people like Elena, but they also impact people like her worker. I'm really concerned about the Deficit Commission's attempts to cut Medi-Cal, not just because of people like Elena, but because what happens to Elena could potentially happen to any of us. One of the goals that was originally intended back in the 30s with the New Deal and all of the creation of the Social Security programs and so forth was to create a social safety net. And that safety net is intended to catch you when you fall. The landscape for people with disabilities who receive Medi-Cal has been pretty dicey over the past several years. Governor's budgets have systematically eliminated what are called optional Medi-Cal services. So several years back, people stopped being able to have their teeth cleaned and to have that service paid for by Medi-Cal. Then psychological services were eliminated under Medi-Cal. Vision services came after that. This year, we're slated to see a 20% across-the-board cut to in-home support services. And as you recall, those are the folks that help people like Elena get dressed, get out of bed, prepare meals. Now, I'm just curious. Out of those tasks, getting out of bed and preparing meals and getting dressed, what part of those tasks, what part of that is she supposed to do without? How do you do without 20% of those essential services? We've talked about the social contract that was made with you and with me so long ago, and how it's incumbent on us to ensure that that contract is still in place for our children and our grandchildren. This is not the time to remain silent. Get off the sidelines and get in the game. You know why? Because there are lives that depend on it. Because we in the disability rights movement, we know that a community that excludes even one of our members is not a community at all.
But the most important thing out of this meeting is that we all are united for next steps of action.
The debt ceiling deal, in which they already cut $1 trillion, and they said, Congress said that an automatic $1.2 trillion more will be cut, half programs, social programs, half defense, unless the SuperCommittee, a group of 18 Congresspeople, come up with at least $1.5 trillion more. The cuts will be heavily focused on Medicare and Medicaid initially, not so much Social Security, but Medicare and Medicaid. The cuts will be backloaded. Those of you who negotiate contracts know what I mean. It won't hit the first year, which is election year. Also, there will be big corporate and top wealthiest bracket rate individual corporate tax cuts. Tax cuts. They're going to recommend cutting the top corporate rate from 35 to somewhere between 23 and 28%, and the same for the wealthiest income earners, households. They will cut them similarly to 23 to 28%, but they will hike taxes on the middle class. You can expect to have some of your mortgage deductions cut. Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid are not the primary cause of the deficits and the debt. Here are the causes. First of all, inflation in Pentagon and war costs. Just the inflation. Normal inflation rate about 2% over the last decade per year. War spending, Pentagon spending, including war, increased 8.2% per year. Not 2%, 8.2%. If we had only increased the Pentagon deficit 2% per year, not 8.2, we would have saved $2.1 trillion over the last year. What's the other major cause? The Bush tax cuts. Between 2001 and 2005, extended here until 2012, $3.4 trillion in tax cuts, 80% of which go to the wealthiest 20% in corporations. That amounts to $2.9 trillion of additional debt over the last decade. We bailed out banks and financial institutions, just under $900 billion. That's taxpayer bailouts. That's from Congress. The Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, bailed out banks to the tune of $9 trillion. And how did that Federal Reserve bail out the banks? It gave them all the money they wanted to take at 0.25% interest. Social Security has a $2.4 trillion surplus. $2.4 trillion, and will generate another $1 trillion of surplus between now and 2024. You know, we have no cost controls on healthcare costs. That's the big problem. And unfortunately, you know, the recent ACA bill last year really does not control costs. We haven't solved that problem. And you're not going to solve it until you get Medicare for all. Okay? Yes. A minute ago I said there's $2.4 trillion surplus. That's true. However, every year Congress has borrowed that surplus from the Social Security Trust Fund. Has put an IOU in there, a special treasury bond that can't be spent, and has taken the actual cash and has spent it to cover budget deficits that are caused mainly by wars, tax cuts for the rich, etc. President Obama himself has proposed on September 19th, out of the box, to cut Medicare and Medicaid by $320 billion for a start. So let me conclude by saying it's important that we not only defend against the cuts and make it clear we don't want any cuts, any concessions in these programs, because these programs aren't going broke. They aren't the problem for the deficit and the debt. They're being used as the excuse so that the rich don't have to raise their taxes. You see, that's what the deficit stuff is all about. It's their tax cuts and their bond interest rates. Don't touch that. And in exchange, you give up your jobs, you give up your benefits, you cut your programs, you see.
We say that a country, a city, a world, a civilization is judged by how we treat the youngest, the oldest, the poorest, and those who can't take care of themselves. That's right. The United States is coming upon a judgment, and they will be judged lacking if they don't do the right thing. But we must tell them what the right thing is. Our precious Social Security program, as well as Medicare and Medicaid, are under attack. And not just by the far right and the ultra-conservatives. Even some Democrats, the folks who fought to establish these programs in the first place, are talking about making cuts and raising the retirement age. And are we going to sit by and let this happen? No! Say hell no!
Hell no!
Remember, Social Security hasn't added 1 cent to the deficit. It has a $2.4 trillion surplus. It is solvent for the next 30 years if we do nothing. It is really important that you go out and spread the message. Everybody in this room is a teacher. Everybody in this room has people to talk to. You must do that talking. Lift the cap. Yes. If you say scrap the cap or raise the cap. All right. We need to close the corporate loopholes and stop bailing out Wall Street. This fight is about protecting Main Street. Are we going to let the corporate tax breaks continue? Hell no! Government can do something about that, and that's what government is there for, to create jobs for the youth, to create jobs for people so that they can pay into Social Security, so that they can get it when they retire. That's their job. Are we going to make them do it? Hell yes! All right? I want you to call, email, and fax Senator Feinstein and demand that she be a champion for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. She has to do her damn job that we elected her to. She represents us, and you have to tell her each and every day in a phone call, don't mess with Social Security. Don't touch Medicare and Medicaid. Hands off. We need to talk to your members of Congress each and every day. You need to tell them how to vote. How do you get the people to do what you want them to do? Machiavelli said, if you want to be the prince, you got to take care of the people, or the people will take care of you. It was true then, and it's true now. You are the people, and you can take care of them if they don't take care of you. It's called voting. It's called calling people up and telling them what is true and telling them what we need done. Social Security is under attack. What do?
Stand up, fight back.
You stand up and you fight for our contract. These things were a promise given to us by our country. We work, we put money in, and when we retire, we want our Medicare and we want our Social Security. If we die when we're young, we want our children to get our Social Security. We want our spouse to get our Social Security. If we become